Welcome to my channel, Delightful Stories. I'll be happy if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Enjoy watching and don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments about the story. The ringing of the telephone distracted Barbara from her thoughts, and the screen showed a beloved. Barbara happily grabbed the receiver. "Darling, I was just thinking of you." "Good morning, Belle," he answered. "How was last night? What did my girl saw in her sleep?" "Yes, of course, you. All my dreams are only about you. Really. Don't you get tired of me during the day and I keep sticking out in front of you even at night?" She laughed, feeling the warmth spreading in her chest as she always did when she heard the voice of the man she loved. "I never tire of being with you. You know that. In that case, let me invite you to dinner at our restaurant. I'll pick you up at 8:00 tonight. If that's all right with you, of course." "Yes, of course, I'm delighted, and I'll be ready soon." Barbara hung up and looked at herself in the mirror. In the reflection, she was looking at a very attractive 22-year-old girl with short and curly, unruly hair, huge brown eyes, and a charming, childlike smile. "I'm not ugly," he thought Barbara, "but I'm not God's beauty either. And what did he see in me? What was the reason? What was the reason? What were the signs that made a man like me stand out? After all, there are so many beauties around, you can't take your eyes off of them. And for some reason, he is with me." But the girl immediately threw all the negative thoughts out of her head and began preparations for the evening. She still had to do a lot of things to look like a picture by 8 o'clock, to make her beloved proud of her, to make him happy to look at her. First of all, Barbara ran to the beauty salon. There she took a bunch of treatments from manicure to hair, then ran through the boutiques and chose a stunning dress from. It was expensive, but she was a girl who could afford it. She was from a very, obscenely wealthy family. Her father was the head of a large holding company with branches in all major cities and even abroad. Barbara herself had already completed 4 years at a prestigious foreign college by the time she was 22, and was now preparing to work with her father. The doorbell rang. Here, by the way, were Dad and Mom. The girl jumped up like a bird and rushed to open the door. "Mommy, Daddy, how nice of you to come." She hugged her parents. Alice looked at her daughter from head to toe. "Honey, you look radiant today. Are you going somewhere?" "Leisha invited me to dinner." "With pleasure," the girl answered. "At 8, pick me up." "And I told you," turned to his wife's father, Gregor, "something is going to happen." Then Barbara realized that her parents also looked festive and elegant. "Are you celebrating today too?" she asked. "I'll tell you in confidence," he smiled. "Your Leisha invited me and your mother to dinner. And do you have any ideas about it?" Barbara blushed and embarrassed. Her heart was beating fast. Could it really be true that tonight would be the day she had dreamed of for so long? When Barbara came home 6 months ago, and at the end of college, her father asked, "Will you take a vacation or go straight to the collective and begin to learn the basics of the profession?" "I'm for vacations," my daughter answered, "but I still want to see where I will work. Will you show me?" "With pleasure." So the next day, her father took her to his headquarters. As they entered the large, rather imposing-looking building, he led his daughter past the security guards who looked like twin brothers, large, dressed in the same formal suits, to the second floor. All the employees who met along the way greeted her subserviently, and her father introduced Barbara to them. "You meet Barbara, my daughter. Please love and welcome. She will soon join our friendly staff." They smiled politely and expressed hope that we would soon work together, while the girl smiled embarrassedly and said the same thing to everyone. "We're very pleased to meet you." Finally, they passed through the reception area with the pretty young receptionist and entered her father's gigantic-sized office. "Ah, Dad." "I'm so embarrassed," Barbara said as she sat down on the soft leather sofa. "Everyone seemed to look at me with mockery, like, so young, do not know anything in the work. But if the daughter of the chief, so she gets it all at once. And what's wrong with what you said?" "It's not true," surprised my father. You really are my daughter, my only heiress, and you really get everything. So it's perfectly fair. Who else have I built this whole empire for? For you, and for future grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. This is life. What for many people is earned through blood and sweat, for others it's their birthright, and we won't apologize to anyone for that. You're right, Dad. I just wish I could earn the respect of the staff not only as your daughter, but also as a professional. Well, that's another matter. You'll have to try hard, but you're not only a pretty girl, you're also smart, and it won't take you long to get the right reputation. Gregor sat down at his huge mahogany desk and pressed one of the endless buttons. I'm listening to you, Gregor. The secretary's voice sounded. Mary, will you call Leo for me, please? Right away, Mary answered eagerly. In a few minutes he was in the office. Barbara even squeezed her eyes shut, shook her head, so irresistible was this. A young man in his 30s, tall, with narrow hips and broad shoulders, unruly thick hair, and some bottomless blue eyes, he embodied the complete image of a heartthrob in any girl's wildest fantasies. Barbara felt redness flood her face. Gregor laughed. Leo, I never cease to be amazed at the way you act on every member of the fairer sex, from the cleaning lady to my wife. My daughter has not escaped her fate, either. Meet Barbara, my heiress. Barbara is fine, she said. Daddy, stop trying to make me blush. Leo took her hand lightly and touched her fingers with his lips. She felt an electric shock in her hand, and then the shock ran through her body. I can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you. Gregor, I had no idea your daughter was so beautiful, although there's nothing to be surprised about. Your wife is charming too. Daughter, be careful, laughed the father. Our Leo is a real heart-eater. No one can resist his charms, not even your mother. Come on, Gregor, Leo said nonchalantly. I'm just a great admirer of women's beauty. It's a fine art to make such a pretty thing, isn't it? You see, my daughter, he flattered me in between. But that's not his only ability. He's also a professional in our business. That's why I'm putting you in his complete disposition. Leo will tell you everything and show you everything. Leo, take my daughter around the office and tell her everything, so far at least superficially, about what we do here. With great pleasure. The man offered his elbow and gently took her hand. Barbara felt another jolt of electricity, and Leo led her out of her father's office. In the waiting room, the girls saw the receptionist glare angrily in their direction. But immediately, she smiled sweetly. Barbara was even amused. I see you appreciate her Leo too, she whispered. What about it? Leo winked. All women are beautiful in their own way. He took her through the numerous offices, introduced her to the staff, and at the same time explained the nature of each employee's work. The girl immediately noticed that every female employee does not take her eyes off the man, literally looking into his mouth, and all of them, as one of them, were jealously staring at Barbara, as if they sensed a rival in her. They were on their way back to the office when an intrigued Barbara asked, Explain to me, please, how you are so dashing. Barbara, call me by my first name. Okay, because I'm beginning to feel like an ancient old man. Okay, Leo, how's that? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. What am I dashing at? Well, I can see that all the women here are crazy about you. And you're making eyes at everybody. And not one of them gets nervous and doesn't even show a drop of jealousy. That's a science, laughed Leo. And to be honest, it's just that I'm so easygoing. I'm at peace with everyone. In addition, in me lies an unquenchable desire to woo all women, but not to belong to anyone. As the hussars say, there is no such thing as ugly women. There is not enough vodka. In my case, you can find a twist in each one. That's how they teach actors to portray love. Find something in your partner that you can love, and focus on that. And didn't anyone want to charm you? Didn't believe the girl. What about the sense of ownership? I never promise anything to anyone. The man cut her off. The truth is, it has been so far. Before you, I have never met such incomparable charms on my way. Barbara laughed. Leo laughed next. About this time they entered their father's house and Leo asked, "Gregor, allow me to invite your daughter to dinner. I promise to bring her back on time and safe and sound." "There you are, my daughter. You've already had your charms." "I have, Daddy. But they didn't ask me if I wanted to have dinner with him." "Clever strategist," Gregor nodded. "But clever, I grant you. Ask your daughter, though. She's not an easy girl. She has a temper." Leo looked at Barbara questioningly, and she simply couldn't refuse, nodding in agreement. "That's fine. I'll pick her up at 8 in the evening." That's it. The whole day was ruined. Did he really like me? Or did he hit on me as the boss's daughter? How should I act with him? Indifferent and aloof, or sweet and trusting? What should I wear? A lavish outfit or something simpler? She couldn't think about work anymore and told her father, "Dad, I think that's enough for the first day. I'll be back to work when I'm done with my vacation, like we agreed." "I understand, honey." Gregor winked slyly at his daughter. "Vacation starts at 8 o'clock at night. Come on, Dad." Barbara was embarrassed. "I just want to have fun, you know. I've been doing nothing but studying for the last few years and I haven't had any fun." Leo is such a nice man, and such a nice man, and such an interesting conversationalist. Gregor hugged his daughter, kissed her on the top of her head, and went about his business. And Barbara went straight to the beauty salon where she decisively ordered the master to cut her hair. The hairdresser shook her hands in horror. "Girl, is it possible to take such beauty and cut it off?" Indeed, Barbara was proud of her hair. Thick, curly, long. But on the other hand, they required a lot of attention and care. Yes, and the girl with the thick braid looked very young. And now she wanted to look older and more serious. And Leo wouldn't treat her as an equal. He might even patronize her like an older man. And she wanted a completely different relationship, even knowing that this irresistible man aroused the same feelings in all women. When the girl looked at her reflection in the mirror after her updated hairstyle, she was pleased with the result. She saw a pretty, stern, and despite the childish smile, a girl, and she looked her age, which means she achieved the desired result. Now run to her mother. Alice is a real professional when it comes to creating the image and the choice of clothes. Her mother was at a loss for words when she saw her daughter's hair so radically changed. "My God, what have you done? Where are your gorgeous curls?" "Mommy, I like it better this way." "But that's not what we're talking about right now. I'm having dinner with my boyfriend tonight, and I want to look my best. You've got to help me do it." Alice, though she was in her late 40s, was a very attractive woman, well-groomed and with great taste. One might say an hairpin and a piece of fabric makes a masterpiece. However, what else can an oligarch's wife do but take care of her house, herself and her husband and daughter? "Of course. So," said the woman, "you've only recently returned from studying, and where have you managed?" "I know a friend of mine. It's Leo." Barbara blushed. "Leo." Alice smiled understandingly. "Be careful, my girl. That bird values freedom. I don't think anyone can keep him in the cage of a serious relationship. But, Mother, it's only dinner and nothing more." I see. You've already sacrificed your gorgeous hair for a simple dinner. All right, my job is to warn you. So where do we start? What are you gonna wear tonight? The femme-fatale or the cute, demure one? More like a serious, pretty girl. Barbara smiled. I see. Strict and graceful, then. Mother and daughter searched the entire closet, but they didn't find anything and decided to go on a trip to the expensive boutiques. A few hours later, they returned home with a pile of bags in their hands and began to measure and choose an appropriate outfit. At 8 o'clock sharp, when the doorbell rang, the excited girl ran to open it, a little afraid of the reaction to her new image. Leo was so handsome, so elegant, it took your breath away. When he saw her, he whistled in surprise. "What's this? I haven't been here for a couple of years. Where has the young beauty with the long braid gone? Who are you, unearthly queen? What planet are you from?" Satisfied with the effect produced, she waved her hand, taking a modest form. "Okay, I just wanted to change something in myself, a change of some kind." "Well, I say you did it." Leo kissed her hand admiringly. "You are completely different. I've always been surprised, the way women can change themselves fundamentally in such a short time. I think if I had come back in a week, I wouldn't have recognized you at all." Barbara laughed and they left the house, and the girl's mother looked out the window and shouted, "Leo, don't keep my daughter out late. Don't make an elderly mother worry." Leo took on a look of amazement. And where is the elderly mother? Who are you talking about? If I didn't know the truth, I'd think you were her little sister. Go already, ladies' man." Alice smiled contentedly and closed the window. The restaurant where Leo had brought his companion was deserted. At a few tables, couples were sitting and talking quietly. A romantic atmosphere was in the air. The man gallantly pulled back a chair and helped her sit down. The girl of her age had never been on a date before, and the anticipation of something beautiful and unusual stirred her blood. Leo was a cheerful, amusing conversationalist. He showered her with compliments, told funny stories from life, wooed her handsomely, and at the end of the evening completely won her companion. The girl relaxed and picked up on any topic. And it was all so wonderful and pleasant that the proverbial foe maybe did not seem so unattainable. And from that day on, it spun. A tumultuous romance began. The girl was returning home after a date with her lover, and she no longer doubted for a minute that she was in love with no memory. For a while she circled around the room, humming along, and then she fell on the bed and recalled with rapture every minute, every moment spent with him. One day at breakfast, my father turned to my mother without looking at Barbara. "Alice, what do you think of the prospect of becoming a mother-in-law in the near future and a grandmother no less soon?" My wife, also carefully hiding her smile, answered, "How is it, Gregor, at my age? And a grandmother? Isn't it a little early? And our daughter does not seem to be in love with anyone." "I understand that you, dear Galina Sergeyevna, do not notice how our daughter has blossomed and grown prettier, flying as if on the wings of love. I remember you looked exactly the same before our wedding many years ago." Barbara blushed with pleasure. "Dad, Mom, come on. We haven't even thought about getting married yet. It's just that we're very good together." One day, while out shopping, Barbara unexpectedly met Dad's secretary and waved hello to her. "Mary, I'm glad to see you. Would you like a cup of coffee?" "With pleasure," she nodded. The girls went to a cozy cafe on the first floor of the mall. They ordered coffee and dessert and were awkwardly silent while waiting for their order. "Did you hear that congratulations are in order?" Suddenly Mary said. "Congratulations on what?" I didn't understand. "Well, how?" "All they talk about in the office is your stormy affair with Leo." Oh, that." Barbara made a surprised face. "Yes, we spend a lot of time together, but we haven't decided anything about the future yet." But in the depths of her shining eyes, one could read freely. Eyes we love each other and a great desire to share her all. Consuming happiness with someone. You know, she turned and stared out the window at Mary. "You're a kind, sweet girl, and I wouldn't want you to join the ranks of those to whom Leo would break her heart." What are you talking about? Leo isn't like that. He's kind and caring. At first he is, Mary grinned. And then it's the same routine. Admiration, rapture, candlelit fairy tales, declarations of love. But no matter how long the candy and bouquet period, the end is the same. The tears and heartbreak. And you had an affair with him? The girl asked understandingly. She wanted to feel sorry for everyone who was unhappy. So did almost all the women in our office. Mary answered sadly. And what I can't understand is that no one resents him, and everyone lives with the hope of being in his arms at least once more. I guess it's a talent, she sighed, but I'm sure he won't break my heart. Well, everyone thought so. You wouldn't be the first or the last. I guess you're in for a lot of surprises. Although I don't mean to be such an old bore. You'll be all right. It was as if the secretary was going to add something for a while, but then she simply waved, and the girls changed the subject. They sat for a while, had coffee, and then said goodbye. Barbara returned home in a spoiled mood. The conversation with her father's secretary had left a strange residue on her heart. It seemed nothing unexpected. She knew herself that the girl had had many affairs before her, but some sense of bitterness overwhelmed her. Maybe that's what jealousy is, the girl thought. As though why be jealous of the past? All right, we need to end the moral masochism and look to the future with hope. Besides, it's not like we haven't discussed anything yet. We've only been dating for a few months, but I already seem to be acting like a dog, just not ready to wag my tail and run after him to the edge of the world. At last, the dreams of her lover had superseded all unpleasant thoughts, and Barbara calmed down and began to dream, as she did every night before she went to bed. Only in the depths of her soul there was still a small worm of doubt. So tonight, Leo invited her and her parents to dinner. Her heart beat in anticipation of the very thing she had secretly dreamed about and even dreamed about in her dreams about in her dreams. Leo picked them up at 8 o'clock sharp. He was always unusually punctual. He complimented his mother and daughter and gave them both a gorgeous bouquet of flowers. The man took the whole family somewhere out of town. "Where are we going?" Barbara asked, intrigued, to some new place in the country. "It's a surprise," the driver winked. The car stopped at a cozy little house, and the man led everyone inside. Although the house did not look particularly large and rather plain compared to the huge family house, inside it was nevertheless spacious and very charming. "Please come into my humble bachelor abode," Leo invited. "Don't be modest. Why haven't you ever invited us to your place before?" There was no occasion for that. Leo stoked the fireplace, and it got even cozier. The girl's heart began to pound loudly at hearing the hint. Is it really true? Could this be the very thing she had been thinking about for so long? In front of the fireplace there was a beautifully set table, buckets of ice, and a bottle of champagne. The wood crackled cheerfully, and the whole thing set the mood for romance. When everyone was seated at the table, Leo opened a bottle of champagne, poured it into glasses, and made a toast. "I am delighted that you have honored me with a visit to my humble abode, and I want to tell you that I am immensely excited about what I am about to say to you. Barbara, we've known each other for 6 months, but I knew from the first time we met that you were the one I'd been waiting for and looking for all my life. Now I'm just going to ask your parents by right of seniority. Would you agree to marry me to your daughter and bless our marriage? Does the bride herself know?" The father looked at his daughter and asked, "Has she given her consent?" "Well, I'll ask her now." Leo put a glass on the table, took a velvet box from his pocket, and got down on one knee. "Barbara, I ask for your hand. Will you agree to marry me, making me the happiest man on earth?" The girl was so overwhelmed with emotion that she could only nod and whisper, "Yes." The dinner passed in a homely, warm, and family atmosphere. And when it was time to say goodbye, the bride felt like giving up on all the conventions and staying with her beloved, but like a real gentleman, he accompanied the bride and her parents home and went back to his place. And so it was that time, dearest to the heart of any girl and woman, the time of wedding troubles. For days on end, mother and daughter were running around town in search of a decent wedding dress, choosing a venue for the celebration, ordering flowers, making menus, filling out invitation cards for guests, and a million other little things. The groom himself took it upon himself to choose the venue and prepare for the honeymoon. As he told his bride, "I want it to be like in romantic movies. We leave right from the wedding feast. We leave the restaurant and rose petals and grains of rice are flying at us. We get into a car decorated with funny inscriptions and drive off into the sunset somewhere on the coast. And the guests shout all sorts of obscene wishes afterwards and stay on to celebrate the wedding, without the bride and groom. God, what a romantic you are." Barbara sighed rapturously, and her heart sank with happiness. Most recently, Leo gave his bride a set of keys to his house, with the words, "I feel like a mistress in my lonely dwelling. Come over any time and do whatever you want." Really? The girl's eyes lit up. "Even at night, even in the morning. But if you decide to drop by unannounced, at least call ahead and give me some time." The man was taken aback. "I would like to have time to clean up. I'm not that young. I also sometimes need at least a shave." The girl did not pay much attention to her fiancé's words. One day her fiancé's warning slipped her mind, and she decided to give her lover a pleasant surprise. She skipped to the supermarket, picked up a cart of products, and drove to her beloved's house, knowing that he was at work. She was going to cook her beloved a romantic, candlelit dinner. The girl entered the house, unwrapped the bags of food, and began to clean up. And there was a very unpleasant surprise waiting for her. First, she found her fiancé in the bedroom. The bed had been stripped on both sides, as if a couple of lovers had slept there. Some of the man's clothes were strewn about, as if he had undressed as he went. The girl decided not to jump to conclusions and find an explanation. A second surprise, no less shocking, awaited her in the bathroom. On the floor lay a lone gold earring, as if in a hurry unnoticed by her mistress. And the girl thought she had seen it somewhere else, and very recently. Increasingly nervous, Barbara opened the basket with the dirty laundry and felt her heart plummet into her knees. At the very top of the pile of men's clothes stood out vividly a toxic red bra. Squeamishly slammed the basket. She sat down, exhausted, on the edge of the tub and looked at herself in the mirror. And suddenly it hit her. She remembered who she'd seen those earrings on, her father's secretary. She knew how much her fiancé loved women and how much women loved him. It was foolish to hope that such a flawless, handsome man and devourer of women's hearts would remain faithful to one, even the most indescribable beauty and cleverness. So why bother with all these weddings? Suddenly, the girl heard the sound of a door opening and the soft singing of a groom. She stepped out of the bathroom and stood before a man dazed with surprise. "What are you doing here?" Stammering, Leo asked. "I mean, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry, you just didn't say anything. I wasn't expecting you, and I forgot to warn you. So I saw something that was obviously not meant for other people's eyes." "What do you mean, my love?" He spoke hurriedly, wrinkling his nose tensely, as if trying to remember what he hadn't had time to clean up. "I've noticed a lot." She grinned mournfully. "What's wrong with my bed?" He sounded frightened. Except that you slept in it with someone. And in the bathroom I found an earring on the floor. An earring that someone had forgotten. Do you recognize it? And I recognized it. And I recognized it. I do not talk about the bright red object of women's underwear. There's one thing I don't understand. If you cheat, if you still prefer to change women like gloves, why did you ask me to marry you? Or did you think that I would be your constant Rhea while you had fun landing at the next alternate airfield? The pale man gradually came to his senses and finally laughed out loud. It was unclear whether he really laughed heartily or was trying to buy time to justify himself and keep a good face on a bad game. Honey, honestly, you took me by surprise. I even had time to be frightened, though I'm not guilty of anything to you, my soul. He pulled her down on the sofa and sat down next to her, holding her hand. I was not at home last night. I spent the night at a friend's house. We sat up late at a preference game, and he offered me a sleepover. I agreed. It was closer to his office. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't think it would upset you so much. So, the secretary was alone in your house, and she left traces of her stay and her things everywhere, sarcastically asked the girl. But why alone? The man, who had completely recovered his senses, shrugged his shoulders. With my friend, he asked permission to have a romantic date at my house. He lives with his parents. I didn't say no, and whether he was with her or with someone else, I don't know. The girl slowly came to her senses, and a sharp sense of relief was replaced by guilt. I am such a fool, she cried. I had already imagined so much for myself. It's because I still can't believe that you love me. Of course I do, baby. You're the only one. I don't need anyone else. And I made my choice as soon as I saw you. I promise you'll never be disappointed. You're just tired from all the wedding preparations. And your nerves got the better of you. But we'll get through this, the atomic war and the wedding reception. The bride laughed happily, wiping away her tears. Tears of joy now. A week before the wedding, a little tired, Barbara arrived at her father's office and brought him signed wedding invitations so he could hand them out to his employees himself. In the reception area, she stopped by the receptionist's desk and smiled at her with a friendly smile. Hello, dear. Accept the invitation to our wedding, and handed her a beautiful card. The woman suddenly changed her face, and it seemed that she was about to cry. What is it with you? What happened? The bride was frightened. Yes, everything is fine. The secretary pulled herself together. It's just the pressure. I'm taking the invitations to Dad, and you and I are going to go together to the cafe, order coffee and ice cream, and talk. Okay. The secretary nodded sadly, and in 10 minutes the girls were already crossing the road and entering a small cafe. They ordered themselves a cup of drink and an ice cream scoop. The girl said cheerfully, and I know you had a date at the house. The spoon immediately fell out of Mary's hands, and the girl was suddenly covered in spots. Really? I don't believe it. Did he confess everything to you? Well, yes. She nodded. And you're okay with that? I don't get it. What's the big deal? He's free to use his house as he likes. After all, we're not married or living together yet. What did your fiancé tell you? Mary was beginning to guess. Well, that he gave the keys to the house to a friend for a romantic date. And I guessed it was with you. I found your earring. Here, take it. She held out the piece of jewelry and was confused to see that she was shaken by silent laughter. Mary could not understand what funny she had said, and the secretary still could not calm down. At last she wiped away the tears of laughter and muttered, Yeah, he is in his repertoire. What a wild imagination. And I told you to be careful, I warned you. What do you mean? Barbara was perplexed, but gradually anxiety began to fill her insides. What do you mean? If you hadn't been so kind and naive, I wouldn't have said a word to you. But I pity you. Did you really believe that I was in his house with some unknown person? Do you really believe everything you're told, even against your better judgment? So, he was the one with you, whispered the pale bride. Well, Of course, he does not deny himself anything. And I'm not the only one who's been in his house. I mean, his love affairs. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. But if I don't, someone else will. You better know everything before it's too late. Barbara got up and on her feet walked out of the cafe, ignoring the shouting in her wake. She urgently needed to be alone with herself, so that no living soul could see her broken heart breaking. The girl entered the park, walked down the alley to the farthest corner, and finally let her tears flow. She had never felt so crushed and humiliated. Barbara wept bitterly and wiped streams of tears, as if mourning her unfulfilled feminine happiness and foolish love. After sitting on the bench for nearly 2 hours, she resolutely stood up, wiped her face with a handkerchief, and smiled sternly to herself. Well, take the blow and answer it with dignity. You are not the daughter of a man who achieved everything by his wits and toil for nothing. I am clever and strong. So this man will never again dare take advantage of the feelings of the women he has deceived. She returned to the office and sat beside her rival for half an hour, discussing something. The face of the initially surprised secretary grew more excited and satisfied by the minute. At the end of the conversation, she just glowed. Oh, you surprised me. Truly, you are as ruthless with the enemies as my father. Congratulations. You have my full support. Outwardly, the bride had not changed a bit. She still looked like a girl in love through and through, her head completely occupied with nothing but wedding preparations. Leo still took the bride to restaurants, movies, and stores, showing his mad love and passion. The girl ardently responded to his feelings, throwing flaming glances at the groom, smiling at his jokes, and thanking him for every fake compliment. And only her parents, not understanding cause and effect, noticed the elusive change in their daughter's mood. One day, her father turned to his wife over dinner. Heard you think our daughter has somehow changed in anticipation of an important event? Yes, you're right. Apparently she's grown up and realized that she's making the most important step in her life. To all of her parents' questions, the girl replied that she was just worried for a long time before the wedding, and now she was gradually getting better. The cheater also noticed a change in his young bride, but he did not pay much attention to it, writing off her unusual behavior and some coldness to the excitement before such a momentous event. In addition, the man was completely and irrevocably convinced of his own irresistibility. I see that you have calmed down a little. Now you are not shaking before the celebration. Yes, my love, she said, smiling sweetly. She did not twist her soul, grinning maliciously to herself. I have only one small favor to ask of you. Any whim, my love. The unsuspecting bridegroom smiled. Just give me the order, and I'm at your feet, ready for anything. Use me as you wish. You know that we young girls are very nervous before the main event in their lives. At least I am. I am very nervous, and I want to make sure that at the most important moment, no one and nothing is spoiled. Of course, my love. I understand you. I myself am nervous before the main ritual in my life. After all, I was free and left only to myself, and now such a responsibility falls on my shoulder. I don't want to let you down in any way, so you have your orders, princess. I am ready for any exploits. Mentally marveling at such hypocrisy, she continued, The wedding is in 5 days, but I'm still worried. What if something does not go according to plan? So I have, I think, quite an acceptable way out of the situation. I've seen in romantic Hollywood movies that they have such a tradition before the wedding, to have a dress rehearsal wedding reception. Well, you know, when the wedding melody is played, in this case the Mendelssohn March, everyone does the script for everything that's supposed to happen at the wedding, you know. Yes, I get it, smiled Leo. Do you want to do a dress rehearsal too? Yeah. Only the people closest to me will be in attendance. In our case, just my parents and a few girlfriends. Do you want to invite your friends, witnesses, whoever you want? Yeah, I don't mind. And when? The man asked me busily. Tomorrow, Barbara smiled. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Just the way you like it. We'll start at the restaurant we've chosen together. I'm afraid you've picked the wrong place. He shook his head. It's always booked up for months in advance. Don't be afraid, my love. She answered sweetly, remembering how much it had cost her to rent the entire restaurant for future theatrical actions. I've already booked our wedding restaurant for our happy one of kind wedding rehearsal. And guess what else? Invite as many of your friends as you can, the girl said confidentially, looking into the groom's deceitful eyes. I will have girlfriends for whom your friends should be a couple for the duration of the celebration. In the evening, at home, during dinner, the daughter said to her parents, Mom, Dad, tomorrow we have a rehearsal wedding. How's that? Dad almost choked up. Is there such a thing? Are we going to say our vows in front of the priest? Why are you so old? Have you ever seen in movies where they rehearse first so there are no mistakes? Still, it will be a major day in the life of our daughter. We want it to go off without a hitch. This holiday will be filmed and then shown to our children and grandchildren. So I support my daughter. Don't worry, honey, we'll be there and we'll do everything we need to do. The next day, the bride called her secretary early in the morning and mysteriously asked, Are you all set? Don't worry, I did everything as you asked, fully prepared. The parents sensed that today would be something very important for their daughter, almost more important than the wedding itself. So the parents were in a bit of a state of suspense when they arrived at the restaurant. Everything was beautiful and solemn, as if the rehearsal was really a repetition of what would happen tomorrow. It was a little disconcerting to see the huge screen on the stage where the musicians usually sat. Soon the groom appeared, surrounded by his invited friends, smiling and looking over at the bridesmaids, as if looking out for the right ones for tomorrow's celebration. Finally, the bride, in a fancy white gown, entered the hall under the arm of a smartly dressed Mary and proclaimed, Attention, everyone. Leo, you please sit in front of the screen now with your friends. And the girls and I hope you don't need to be introduced to any of them, will be right next to you. Mom, Dad, there's a front row seat ready for you. The incomprehensible parents sat down in the seat offered, and the lights in the restaurant dimmed. The screen lit up, and one by one the pictures began to appear, alternately of the bridegroom and his bridesmaids. With each change of pictures, there was a conversation coming out of the speakers. Come on, Angelica, you know very well that you're the only one I love. A man's recorded voice sounded. Jane, this is just a stepping stone to our beautiful future. The picture would change, and a picture of the next bridesmaid would appear. A new recording would turn on. I don't think. Our future with you is just around the corner. I just need to get a foothold in this family, and as soon as I become the husband of the chief's daughter, consider the whole world in our pocket. And again the girl's picture changed, Leo's voice resounding, Mio, Lee, my happiness, everything I do is only for you, for our future together, for our future together. Do you believe me? This is a necessary procedure. Only I will get on my feet and get support from my future father-in-law, and you and I, and only you, will enjoy life. Throughout the entire impromptu movie, Leo at first couldn't believe his eyes and ears, then turned pale, then blotched, and by their monologue with the third girl simply collapsed onto the table without energy, no longer trying to maintain his dignity. The father, on the other hand, watched with interest what was going on, listened to the recorded conversations, and looked at his daughter admiringly. She stood up and spoke loudly. And now, friends, the cherry on the cake. As if on cue, the picture of Mary, her father's secretary, appeared on the screen, and Leo's voice came through. You are not a stupid girl. That's why you must understand that my getting married is just a run around. I do not need this girl. I am not interested and bored with her. I will say more. The most beautiful thing about her is her father's position and purse. But I have to put up with it, and it's all for you and me. The screen went out, and a bright light came on in the restaurant hall. The bride in her wedding dress stood up from the table and walked over to her bridesmaids. For agreeing to help me expose this scoundrel. I hope you, like me, have no illusions now and will no longer believe a single false word uttered by this handsome man. Next, she walked over to the table where the newly so confident groom was sitting. So, do you have anything to add? All the only people you love are gathered here. Don't you have anything to say to those to whom you've broken lives and broken hearts? Or at least to me? You are going to make family with my father through me, get control of my money and trample on my feelings, all the while insulting me and making fun of me. Well, my love, you've got it all wrong. You've got it all wrong. You've obviously overestimated your irresistibility. Let's take a look at my father and ask him, Daddy, do you want a son-in-law like that? Pardon me my mistake. There will never be such a son-in-law. Do you want a hypocritical employee who will sell you out without a second thought? Suddenly the father laughed. Bravo, my daughter. I never doubted your intelligence and shrewdness. You are my girl. And now I see it again. Good girl. I'm proud of you, my daughter. Now for the present. Father approached the unfinished love. Lee, I hope you do not wish to remain in my company any longer, and I will graciously allow you to leave of your own accord. And it is only because of all the humiliation my daughter has subjected you to that I will not throw you out in disgrace. The whole town will hear the news of what happened. Isn't that right, Barbara? The daughter nodded eagerly, smiling predatorily. So, just disappear from the radar. Preferably as far away from our city as possible. I hope you don't need to be reminded of the full power of my abilities. Don't try to appear in my way. Farewell. In the deafening silence, the groom looked like a beaten dog, hunched over and somehow aged all at once, headed silently toward the exit of the restaurant, and no one, not even his friends, followed him. The blow was crushing and irrevocable. For some time, everyone sat in silence, stunned by what was happening. But suddenly the girl stood up from the table and spoke loudly. My friends, I know that you cannot fully be considered my friends, but the events of recent times brought us closer together. My wedding is not going to happen. But I am happy that I avoided a huge mistake that would have ruined my life, and that's a reason to celebrate. I'm inviting everyone to a banquet. I took care of everything in advance. The sound of loud music echoed from everywhere, and waitresses began carrying dishes and drinks. Ma muttered almost in shock, Here, honey, your upbringing. I don't have time to watch when the tragedy ends and the comedy begins. The father replied, Don't worry. Anything that doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Our daughter is not weak. She is a fighter and has already survived the first round of the fight for life with honor. Time passed, and the girl, already dressed in her usual evening attire, held a glass of wine and made a toast in a circle of girls. Girls, we were not friends, but you helped me to carry out a just retribution. I don't feel happy, but I feel a sweet sense of victory. Thanks to your help, we put this scoundrel in his place, taking advantage of our heartache. And I'm satisfied, aren't you? The girls cheeked and drank. It had been a long time then, and no matter what, the friends stayed together and continued to have fun. The girls found themselves captivated by the charms of this lady's man in due course. They became friends and became true friends. Very soon, one by one, they married regular good men, though not as irresistible but worthy and loving. And Mary found her happiness among the first, and at each of the weddings the girls had fun. Barbara was sincerely happy for her friends. except that she herself still had not found her feminine happiness. No matter how hard she tried to demonstrate her self-sufficiency and unwillingness to depend on a man, no matter how much she showed that her love was waiting around the corner, still, as before, the girl cried into her pillow at night, experiencing her first love and first betrayal. And she secretly hoped that one day she would meet her again, Leo, and he would realize that she was his only love and his destiny, and he would change. Then she would let her heart breathe again.